Welcome back to our 6th episode. Once again, for our new listeners, during our show, we talk about Alabama high school athletics, SEC sports, and sports topics. Today, we have a very special guest, Malik Cunningham, starting quarterback for Park Crossing of Montgomery, Alabama. He has a Louisville commit and will be playing in the second playoff game tonight at 7 p.m. at Bessemer City. Let's get into this, everybody. This is Agree to Disagree, Sports Talk with Zach and Lee. All right, let's just dive into this. Let's go into the headlines. College football playoff rankings. The shocker of the week was obviously Texas A&M. This just further proves my theory that when you lose to Alabama, your stock drops. And once again, Texas A&M's stocks have dropped since the Alabama game, and it showed this past Saturday. And it makes the Bama-Mississippi State game that more interesting to watch.
Yeah, a lot of people really shocked about seeing Texas A&M at that 4 spot last week in the first college football playoff ranking of the season. A lot of people thought Washington should be there. Those people have a great argument. They were undefeated, beating teams very heavily. They're beating the teams on their schedule, and that's to their point. They're saying, what else can we do? We're beating the teams that are on our schedule. There's nothing else that we can do. And you see this week Texas A&M falling after getting embarrassed by the Bulldogs of Mississippi State, and also a big hit in that game is losing Trevor Knight, for the rest of the season, and an injury in that game. But I want to add something to where you said that, whenever you lose to Alabama, your stocks go down. Actually, last week we saw that A&M stock, rose because they lost to Alabama. They saw the committee saw that loss to Alabama and said it was close. That's actually a good loss, is to lose to Alabama, and they competed, in a decent fashion in that game. So that's why they actually were in that 4 spot. So I'm going to have to disagree with where you said about the stocks falling. Last week we saw that their loss to Alabama was respected, and that put them at that 4 spot, jumping the likes of Louisville, Ohio State, and Washington.
So now this week we have 4 teams, 4 unbeaten teams. Alabama at number 1, Clemson at number 2, Michigan at number 3, and Washington at number 4. I do believe maybe one of those teams might lose. We might get into that a little later.
Yeah, Booj, I agree with you there. I think 2 of those teams in that 4 right there will remain. Like you said, we'll talk about that later. I'm not going to give, the 2 that I think will stay there. But I do think 2 of those teams will stay there. 2 will not be there by the end of the season. But also, Booj, I want to point out something. We're SEC guys, so we're going to, tend to stick talking about SEC topics here on the show. But, we like Booj just said, time to time we will hit, big sports topics. But look at this 8 spot. Texas A&M, loses, gets embarrassed at Mississippi State. Was
Didn't drop that far, though.
Was at the 4 spot and only drops down to 8. People were going crazy about that. I mean, and I agree. I think they should be, down the list a lot further than where they are.
Even though they lost, I still think they're a great football team, and they deserve to be in the top 10.
Oh, I think they're a good football team, but, you look at the loss of Trevor Knight, that team's not going to be the same team the rest of the season. They just lost badly to a Mississippi State team that's not, great. They've shown some strides of lately, but I know they're giving a lot of credit for A&M beating Auburn early in the season, which the head-to-head does count. But if they played again, I think Auburn would embarrass A&M just due to the momentum that Auburn has and the fact that A&M has lost Trevor Knight. But that is interesting to see that A&M is 8 and Auburn is 9. And let's look at the other SEC teams that are in this top 25. Like I mentioned, A&M drops from 4 to 8. Auburn is sitting at 9. LSU at 24. They drop from 13 to 24. And then Arkansas sneaks in at 25. Florida drops from 11 to out of it. So, this week LSU, Arkansas plays, so that's going to eliminate one of those teams from that ranking. So this week, some big implications for that playoff.
Speaking of the college football rankings, let's just go into it. Texas A&M and Mississippi State. This game was the shock of the week. If you listened to last week's episode, I predicted A&M to win handsomely. Mississippi State going into this game was ready to play. There's no question about that. A&M just got lazy, and it cost them the game and the playoffs. I've said last week that it's time for a change at Mississippi State. I'm still standing behind that statement. I still think it's time for a change.
Booj, if you recall last week, I said Dan Mullen has to do something to keep his guys motivated and maybe steal one of these games here down the stretch. And he did that. They came out and they were fired up. They came out and executed their game plan. They had a good game plan. Dan Mullen is very good at strategizing and really chopping up an opposing defense. He's very good at that. We've seen that from his days as being the offensive coordinator at Florida and his previous stops. They had a game plan. They executed that game plan. And also Trevor Knight, leaving the game really helped them, honestly. I think if he would have stayed, that could have been a different ball game down at the end of the stretch there. But let's look at some stats here, Boo. Texas A&M, 117 rushing yards. Coming into this game, they were leading the SEC in rushing yards. So that's really crazy to see. Williams, their stud freshman running back, had 28 yards, and then Keith Ford, had 33 yards. And they were 4 of 15 on third down. That is not good, especially against the subpar defense in the likes of Mississippi State. Their backup, Hubernick, came in 11 of 17, 222 yards, 2 touchdowns, and only 1 pick. So not a terrible game by him. He came in and did his job. And Booge, this Mississippi State defense really stepped up. I told you last week they gave up 627 yards to Samford, not Stanford. And so this week they only gave up 382 and 117 rush yards, like I just said. That's a vast improvement from what they did in the previous week. And the quarterback, Nick Fitzgerald, was effective running the ball. 19 carries, 119 yards, 2 touchdowns. On that first play, Booge, it was a read option. The defense crashes. He goes out and takes it to the house about 50 yards.
Florida versus Arkansas. I just don't think Florida has it this year. That's not really coming from this game. That's coming from the Georgia game. I just didn't see any spark in that team. I didn't see a team that has what it takes to win in big football games. Don't get me wrong. The Georgia game was a big one, but as we all know, Georgia isn't a very good football team. Florida disappointed me on Saturday when they lost to Arkansas. I was hoping for a big win for Coach Mack. He has to get something going, especially going into next season. If he doesn't, and he has another mediocre season like he's had this year, Florida has a big decision on their hands. I do believe, Coach Mack, your seat will be getting warm.
Yeah, I've been hearing that. A lot of fans saying, get rid of Coach Mack, get rid of Coach Mack. I think that's crazy. I think he's one of the best coaches. He's a great offensive mind in getting quarterbacks ready to play. I know this year his quarterback play has not been good, but the man can coach. We've seen great coaches struggle at times. We've seen great coaches have some inconsistency. But you cannot freak out. It's about the process. Calm down. Let the guy get his guys in. Let him get a quarterback that fits that system. Let him coach, and let that thing get rolling. Fans, calm down. Support your team. Trust that coaching staff. Trust Coach Mack. The guy can coach. And watching this Florida-Arkansas game, Booge, you were right. There was no spark. The Gators came out lacking energy. That defense gave up 466 yards. And offensively, they had 12 rushing yards. They went away from that two-back system that they've been going with Scarlett and Pirine, and they went to the two guys that haven't been with the team recently. Thompson's been one-game suspension, and Cronkright has been away from the team for some personal reasons. But they kind of played a little bit more than Scarlett and Pirine did. Altogether, the running back unit didn't get many carries. Del Rio was not effective. He got hurt in that game, so that's going to be interesting seeing what that team does at quarterback going into this coming week. Austin Allen, 15 of 26, 243 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Riley Williams at running back, 26 carries, 148 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Auburn and Vanderbilt. 3 minutes to go in the fourth, and I thought Auburn was going to lose. Another prayer and Jordan Hare, I guess. Watching the game Saturday just proves to me that Auburn's offense isn't that good. I've been saying it all year. I don't think Auburn is as good as people say, and we saw that this past Saturday. Vandy was going to win the game. They had the momentum. They were driving down the field. But that interception saved Auburn's season. I understand Petway pulled a muscle. Is that right?
He strained his left quad muscle.
If I were Gus Malzahn, I would hold Petway until the Iron Bowl. You have a big game coming up against Georgia. I would hold him back just like you did with Sean White. Maybe hold him back for a quarter or two if you need him. Put him in to get, if you're behind, put him in just to get a score up to win the game. But definitely they need him for the rest of the season to win out.
Yeah, Booge, what you said about the Auburn offense, I do think they are actually pretty good. They started off the game with Franklin. Everybody was like, where is Sean White? And to come to find out later in that game, he's been injured this past week, but he played in the second half. And in the second half, they started getting things going. That raises the question, if he would have played the whole game, what would that game have looked like? Franklin only threw for 9 yards passing in that first half. And then Sean White in the second half throws 106 yards, gets that offense going. Petway, 25 carries, 173 yards. And on the other side, I got to give credit where credit is due to offensive coordinator Andy Ludwig and the plan that he devised. Coming into this game, everybody was like, there's no way that offense can hang in there. And they did a pretty good job. They went away from what they usually do. They went in there, were creative. The players really bought into offensive coordinator Lovewood's system. 221 passing yards and only 120 rushing yards. That's crazy because they've been really riding that rushing game. They went in there and threw the ball around, which really helped them out. They looked to control the time of possession, which they did, 35 minutes to Auburn's 24. And oh my goodness, what a highlight play. Zach Cunningham blocking that field goal. That dude is probably, in my opinion, I think he's one of the best players in the SEC. That was very impressive. That takes a lot of skill and game planning and concentration, focused to do what he did.
And as I said last week, Alabama, LSU, the game of the century. Now let me just tell y'all, this is obvious. This game was an offensive battle. Wrong. As I said last week, this was going to be a low-scoring game, and was it ever? 10-0. I think I was correct on the low-scoring part. The Tides defense played a perfect game for all 4 quarters. As Nick Saban said, the Tigers played a perfect game for 3 quarters, and that tells you who won the game. I don't think LSU gave up, and I don't think LSU was tired. Alabama's offense just finally got the better of LSU's defense. Jalen Hurts was the reason and continues to be the reason that Alabama is winning these games. Now, do I think Orgeron will get the job at LSU? The answer is no, not after last week, and here's why. It's not because he lost the game. I saw the fan base for LSU excited and ready to beat Alabama. So going into this game, I was assuming that Orgeron really changed everything. But watching the offense, it looked like he got the playbook from Les Miles. And that's what LSU is trying to avoid. They fired Les Miles. They're trying to avoid Les Miles' offensive scheme. And once again, that's why they fired him. Even though LSU held Alabama to 10 points, that doesn't mean it was a close game. It was never close. LSU was never going to score. And that reflects on Orgeron. He couldn't even call a timeout. 3 minutes later, Nick Saban did the same thing and got the timeout called. Is experience. Orgeron lacks experience, and in order to coach and win championships at LSU, you have to know how to do the small things, and that's knowing how to call a timeout in a huge game. I think the reason he won't get the job is the lack of experience.
Yeah, you raise a good point, Booj, when you're talking about that offense. It looked very similar to what we saw at the beginning of the year. The reason that Les Miles is at home. The reason that he was not the head coach on the sideline of LSU versus Alabama this past Saturday. The offense lacked creativity. You know, we saw some strides in games since Les, was let go of some good things. They were getting creative. They were doing some different things. Why would you come into this game, your biggest game of the year, a rejuvenated fan base, fired up team,
Your coaching job on the line,
and then go back to what's not working? They had some good things going. I mean, I understand Alabama's defense is great. It's unreal. One of the best defenses in the country, if not the best. But we have seen some teams put some yards on that defense. Arkansas put up yards on that defense. Ole Miss put yards up on that defense. There are teams that can Alabama's defense can give up yards. And LSU has tons more talent than those teams I just mentioned that put up yards on Alabama's defense. So that kind of bothered me a little bit just to see the play calling. I still like Coach Orgeron. Like you said, I don't think he'll get that job, but I do like him as far as a motivator and someone to play for, one of the best out there. Going in this game, Booj, I said that LSU had to devise a game plan that made Jalen Hurts use his arm, not his legs. As we see, Jalen Hurts didn't do much through the air. He rushed for 114 yards. That's where he made his money in this game, was on the ground. Like I said, that's what they had to avoid. Jalen Hurts doing what he does on the ground. LSU gave up 216 rushing yards. And on the offensive side, Fournette, 35 rushing yards. He was going to have to get going in order to get a W for the Tigers. Etling was getting bruised, getting hit clobbered every time that he was letting go of that ball. Alabama was able to survive with Hurts' feet and not relying on his arm. And like I said, held Fournette to 2.1 yards per carry.
Now let's go to the phone with starting quarterback at Park Crossing, Malik Cunningham. Malik, thank you so much for coming on the show for us. We are very excited to have you. Now tell us, what is your mindset going into this second round game in the playoff?
The mindset that we have is just to try to make it to see another week. We had a good week of preparation, and we've been buying into what the coach has planned, the game plan, and we're ready to execute it.
How are you preparing for tonight's game? Without giving anything away, how are you personally preparing for it?
Just making the right reads, taking what they give me, and finding mismatches on the field. That's the main goal for me.
Now, give us a little summary of your football background. Basically, how did you start in your football career? How old were you? What position did you play? Where did you play?
Well, I was around about like 5 or 6. Played in midfield in Birmingham, actually. And my first year playing, I was like a little crybaby all the time. But once I got used to hitting it, I started getting used to it, and I became one of the best players on the team.
That's awesome, man. Let me ask you, what motivates you? I know through a season there's a lot of ups and downs. Throughout the season, adversity hits with maybe a loss or injuries to your team. But for you, what motivates you? What keeps you going?
I just like to see the people around me succeed. The people around me motivate me, like my coaches, my teammates, my family, my little brother, people like that.
That kind of goes into our next question here. Even with all the success and all the publicity that you're getting this season, you seem like a guy that's always giving props and giving credit and praise to your teammates, the guys around you. We're always seeing you tweet at guys and Instagram pictures of your teammates, giving them props. But tell us about some of those guys and how they've really stepped up this year for you guys.
We have a lot of people, a lot of transfers come in, and those guys from last year's team step up. We had Cam Bright came back, our safety David came back, and the linebackers, they've been doing a great job. And all the coaches we've been on one goal, and that goal is to get to the state championship.
I hear you, man. All right. Now let's go into a little recruiting talk. We know that you're committed to Louisville, but
Yes, sir.
At this time of the year, usually just verbal commits. For some
Yes,
people
sir.
they can mean a lot. Some people they're just in a moment type thing. But for you,
Yes, sir.
what's going on with the recruiting process? Are there any other teams that are kind of coming into the mix here as of late?
Yes, sir. Right now, even though I'm committed to Louisville, Florida, has been talking to me a lot. They came and watched me play Talbot game.
Okay.
And they've been hitting me up. Coach Mack and Coach Collins, Coach Drew, Coach Dixon, all those guys been hitting me up every day, just checking on me, things like that. And Tulane, they've been at me pretty hard, too. Those are the two schools.
Now, are you going to be taking any visits anywhere?
Yes, sir. I'm taking a visit to Florida, actually Saturday, and then Tulane the next week, and then Louisville the last week, Thanksgiving.
Well, that's awesome to hear, man.
So you're going to Florida tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Now, the college football rankings, well, the second week of rankings came out on Tuesday. Alabama's number 1, Clemson's number 2, Michigan's number 3, and Washington is number 4. Give us your take on what 4 teams you think will make the college football playoffs and why.
Well, I think Alabama's going to be number 1, unless Auburn finds a way to win. With that defense, they've been doing a great job. And Clemson should stay at number 2 unless they lose the ACC. And Michigan, I think if Michigan will lose to Ohio State, and that'll put Ohio State in it. And I think Washington's going to lose, so that'll put Louisville at number 4, in my opinion.
I got another question here for you, Malik. What are 3 players that are in the college game today? We probably already know the answer, one of these guys, but who are 3 guys that you kind of compare your game to and that you could see yourself kind of having a skill set as they do right now in the college game?
Obviously, I'll say Lamar Jackson. I'm trying to think of 2 more. Like, I'll say Jabril Peppers, the impact that he has to the game. Sometimes big play in the game, he'll make that play. I'm that type of guy. I'll say Deshaun Watson, the poise that he has.
All right, let me ask you one more question here. Who do you think will win the Heisman and why?
I'll say Lamar Jackson. His numbers are like video game type numbers.
Yeah.
And I mean, hands down, I think he won it like after he beat Florida State. He put it away then.
So you're looking for Lamar Jackson to get the trophy?
Oh, yeah.
Cool, man.
Get him to keep it warm for you, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're looking for Malik Cunningham to get that trophy in a few years. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I like how that sounds.
Oh, we better be there too now.
All right.
Malik, thank you so much, man. This was great. It was a great interview. You did great. Thank you so much. We definitely want to have you back on.
Hey, man, good luck tonight. Keep giving credit to your teammate and keep working hard out there, man. You're a joy to watch play.
Thank you.
Malik, thank you so much for coming on. It was great to have you. Good luck tonight and have a great game, okay?
Thank you.
All right. You
See
have
you,
a good
man.
one. Now let's switch gears, going from college to high school playoffs. Opelika versus Daphne. Opelika beat Bryant 48-12. J.D. Worth was 11 for 17 for 144 yards, 2 touchdowns, 9 carries, 77 yards for 3 touchdowns. And Daphne beat Lanier 24-6. Mike Franklin had 135 yards. Ty Reynolds had a 70-yard interception for a touchdown.
And Opelika, their offense is very high octane. They average 382 yards per game. Like you said, J.D. Worth is a great quarterback. He does it through the air, does it on the ground, does a little bit of everything. Weldron Ford, senior running back, has 1,120 yards on the season, throwing in 18 touchdowns. Jaleel Hurd, senior wide receiver, 1,307 receiving yards, 14 touchdowns. He is a threat. Going over to Daphne, Mike Franklin does a great job on the ground. Quarterback Chance Newman has done a great job leading that team. It's going to be difficult to see how that Daphne defense can hold that high-octane offense of Opelika, and also that running game for Daphne. Let's see how Opelika can stop that.
St. James versus Tallahassee. St. James beat Satsuma 49-21, and running back Blake Underwood had 208 yards, 4 touchdowns, and sophomore Tony Amerson had 127 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, Tallahassee beat Hale County 29-26.
Yeah, Booch, looking at St. James, they have a very good, underrated running back, Blake Underwood. He's got some offers. One of the biggest ones is Central Michigan. Very, very good. Also, sophomore, young bright star, Tony Amerson at running back. And one of the big-time targets in the 4A area around here in Montgomery, Sterling Jones. Michigan really wants him. Coach Harbaugh really wants him. He's doing a great job on that defense. 245 rushing yards per game. This offense does pretty much everything on the ground. They have a good game-managing quarterback, Josh Garnett. He's a junior. They don't really throw much, Booge. They mostly do all their damage on the ground through Underwood and Amerson. Tallahassee, like you just said, against Hill County, it was a tight contest. They have a great senior linebacker, Logan Goodman, 90 tackles on the year, 14 tackles for loss. Their quarterback, junior Casey Baines, 606 rushing yards, 13 touchdowns, 1,384 passing yards, 17 touchdowns. He is solid. I'm looking forward to seeing that Casey Baines, Sterling Jones matchup.
Now McGill versus Enterprise. McGill beat JD 46-14. Quarterback Bubba Thompson threw for 2 touchdowns. He ran for 1 touchdown, and Jackson Johnson had a pair of interceptions as well. Now Enterprise beat Baker 51-14. Cody Fulton Tice was 5 for 6, 80 yards and a touchdown. He also had 44 rushing yards. Marcus Jones had an 83-yard punt return for a touchdown as well.
Yeah, McGill in that game against JD, they were down at halftime, struggled early, came back out in the second half and did some great things. Like you said, Bubba Thompson, he's very good. Jalen Talbert, Marlon Williams, some great playmakers on that offense. And they really look to keep this balanced attack on the ground, through the air. And their defense, like you said, Jackson Johnson making some big stops. They look to keep that offense on the field. They're a high-octane offense. They want to keep going. They want to stay on the field and put up some yards. Enterprise. This is a redemption game for Enterprise. They lost last year 30-13 in the first round to this Jacket squad of McGill-Tulane. They're looking to break McGill-Tulane's 20-game win streak in this game. Fulton Tice is a very good quarterback, balanced in what he does. It's going to be interesting to see what he can do and how he gets going in this game.
Spanish Fort and Hillcrest play tonight at 7 p.m. Spanish Fort beat Carver 23-22. Quarterback Wyatt Wilkerson replaced quarterback Jack Samsil and sparked a fourth-quarter rally. Thomas Johnson had 18 tackles, setting an all-time state tackle record. Congratulations to Thomas Johnson on that. Hillcrest beat Benjamin Russell 40-16. Quarterback Cole Frederick 19 for 25, 286 yards, 4 touchdowns. Bama running back commit Brian Robinson, 66 yards. He also had a touchdown.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the defending 6A state champ Spanish Fort responds after that close game last week to Carver. A lot of people thought that would be a bigger margin than it was, Booge. But it's going to be interesting to see how this game is. To me, this is defense in Spanish Fort versus high-octane offense over in Hillcrest. Let's see what Thomas Johnson can do with Justin Thomas, his running mate over there on the D-line. He is solid. He is a LSU commit. Defense going to need a big game. Hillcrest, quarterback Cole Frederick. They look to throw the ball, Booge. They threw the ball all over the place against Benjamin Russell, and they got a great running back piece in Brian Robinson, like you mentioned. Those two guys on that offense really look to get things going early, jump on that team early. That's what Carver did. They got up there early, but then Spanish Fort was able to seal the deal at the end.
And last playoff game of the night, Park Crossing and Bessemer City. Park Crossing beat Saraland 45-14. Malik Cunningham 15 for 19, 243 yards. 3 touchdowns, 97 rushing yards, and also a touchdown. Bessemer City beat Chelsea 31-23. Marquel Shelton had 12 tackles, 3 of which were sacks. Delvicio Johnson, 5 receptions for 102 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns.
I mentioned when we were talking about Enterprise and McGill about a redemption game, how Enterprise lost to McGill last year in the first round. Same situation here in Park Crossing, Bessemer City. Last year, Bessemer City beat Park Crossing in a close game in first round. The guys at Park Crossing are very, very excited. A chance to go in there, get redemption, and continue on this role that they have. They're a great team. Malik Cunningham, one of the best in the state. Very underrated nationwide, I think. Miles Broadnax is a good running back. Very, very tough, running between the tackles. Linebacker Cam Bright is a very good linebacker. Pittsburgh commit. Flies everywhere. Very athletic guy. He is going to look to contain the quarterback of Bessemer City, Jason Foster, who is a dual-threat guy. Kind of their offense at Bessemer City. They like to scramble, and then the receivers break off routes. The receivers are very athletic. Foster will throw it up, and those guys will go get it. So what that means for this defense at Park Crossing, they got to be disciplined. They got to contain on the outside, contain Foster. The defensive backs have to stay disciplined and stay with those receivers when they're looking to break those routes and just go up and get it. So that's going to take discipline from this defensive unit.
Now we're going to be switching from high school back to college. South Carolina versus Florida. This one will be interesting to watch. 2 mediocre teams that have so much riding on this game. Both need to win. Florida is just trying to establish a credible football program, and part of that is winning big games, and this is a big game. They have to win it. Florida's quarterback goes down. He's hurt. Luke Del Rio. He's not going to be playing this Saturday. So far, it isn't looking good for Florida. South Carolina is coming off a big win. They have momentum. The question is, can Muschamp keep the momentum going? The other question is, can Florida find an offense to compete with the momentum of South Carolina?
Yeah, for South Carolina, it's very important that they win the battle up front, because with their freshman quarterback, Jake Bentley, it's going to be hard to go into a visiting place and just throw the ball around against a pretty good defensive secondary. So it's important that they win the battle up front, the offensive line and on defense. For me, it's whoever really runs the ball better can possibly, get the advantage to pull out this game. And for that defense of South Carolina, really pressure, whether it be Austin Appleby. Coach Mack said that Appleby will be the starter, but Franks will be there also ready to play, if something happens. So really pressure whoever's in there under center for the Gators. And also for South Carolina, Will Muschamp is coming back to the Swamp. You can't look me in the eyes and tell me that somewhere deep down in Muschamp that he has circled this game and is very fired up to get back there and play this game.
He's PO'd. He's ready to beat him.
And, Booge, I really think that the Gamecocks are going to really play for him in this game. I think they're going to go out and be fired up, and they have momentum. Florida is coming off a tough loss. The crowd for the Gators, get behind the seniors on senior day. Provide energy. Get the guys ready to play. That's what it's going to come down to, I think. The crowd has got to be behind this team. Offensive line has to be ready to play. Running back production. Get your playmakers in space with Callaway. And really on defense, confuse Jake Bentley.
LSU versus Arkansas. Both teams are coming off a huge loss and a huge win. Can LSU bounce back? And can Arkansas keep the momentum going? I think if Arkansas played like they did last week, even though A&M's defense isn't as good as LSU's, I think Arkansas has a big chance to win this game.
Yeah, for LSU, the question is, will they have this Bama hangover? A lot of teams, we've seen them have this Bama hangover where after they play Alabama.
I've talked about it all season.
Or after they play Alabama, they look just like zombies out there. And let's see how Coach O keeps them focused. This Arkansas defense is not great against the run, as we've seen in Auburn. They did a good job against Florida, but Florida's running game is nowhere near what Darius Geis and Leonard Fournette present for the Tigers. So Leonard Fournette really has to get going. For Arkansas, come out the gate swinging. Throw whatever you have at them early. Get the crowd into it like you did against Florida. Get out, get the momentum, bring the pressure on Etling. Etling is down and bruised from all the hits that he's taken. Keep that pressure on him.
Now let's go into Auburn and Georgia. Auburn coming off a scary win against Vanderbilt, and Georgia coming off a huge win in Kentucky. I think Georgia has the momentum right now. Auburn has some injured players. Petway, we haven't heard if he's going to play or not. If not, then Georgia has an opportunity to win this football game. They have to capitalize on that key injury against Auburn. If they don't, then Georgia's just going to lose the game.
For Auburn defensively, they can't let Sonny Michel and Nick Chubb get in the groove like they did last week against Kentucky. 85 yards for Chubb, 127 yards for Michel, and 1 touchdown. For Georgia, be physical. Be physical at your point of attack. Be tough. Be ready to go out there and make this a physical contest. Continue these creative ways of getting running backs involved with the pass game that takes pressure off of your young freshman quarterback, Jacob Eason.
And finally, Alabama versus Mississippi State. I just think Mississippi State's offense is no match for Bama's defense, so that's not going to be a problem. I think what I will be watching for is how Bama's offense comes off a huge win. They can't get complacent. They have to continue to get better. They aren't the best, but I think they have the potential to be the best offense. And I think this game, if they aren't careful, could be one of those that sneaks up on you. Mississippi State has an opportunity coming off a huge win over A&M. But the question is, can they catch Alabama sleeping? Knowing Nick Saban, I don't think they will, but they do have a chance. If they score early, shake Alabama up, get them second-guessing themselves, then Mississippi State could capitalize on that.
All right, for Mississippi State, let's look at this. Nick Fitzgerald, freshman, has done a great job this year. He can really play. He's had 1,705 passing yards, 17 touchdowns. Leads the team in rushing, 839 yards, 8 touchdowns. They got to get the running backs going because Alabama's defense is going to eliminate Fitzgerald using his feet in this game. I saw a stat today that a quarterback hasn't run for 100 yards on Bama in years, and Nick Fitzgerald has run for 100 yards in 3 straight games. I don't see Nick Fitzgerald running for 100 yards against Bama. Their bright spot is on the defensive back unit, so I think you really need to stack that box and trust your DBs going one-on-one against the receivers and stop the running game for Bama, whether it be Hurts or Scarborough or Harris, whoever's back there. Make Jalen Hurts beat you through the air, and you got some talented DBs. See what happens there.
It's time to get to the scores. Who's going to win? Who's going to stay undefeated? And who's going to lose the big game? Let's first start out with Appalachian State and Troy. I have Troy beating them 28-17.
I have Troy picking up a big win, take sole control of the Sun Belt, winning 34-28.
Vanderbilt and Missouri. I have Vanderbilt beating Missouri 24-17.
I got Vandy winning 21-17.
Kentucky versus Tennessee. I have Tennessee winning 31-28.
I think Tennessee will win the game 28-21.
South Carolina versus Florida, 24-10 South Carolina.
I think Florida wins 13-10.
Ole Miss versus Texas A&M, 34-28 Ole Miss.
I think A&M can win this one 23-20.
LSU versus Arkansas, 14-10 Arkansas.
LSU, I have them winning 24-17.
Auburn versus Georgia, 31-24 Auburn.
I have Auburn winning 31-20.
Alabama versus Mississippi State, I have 41-0 Alabama.
I have Bama 42, Mississippi State 17. And that does it for us on the 6th episode. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. It means a lot to see the feedback that you're giving us. And also, huge shout out to quarterback Louisville commit, Park Crossing quarterback Malik Cunningham. Great insight that he gave us, some great things that he shared with us. Getting some insight on his recruitment, his life, and to see how him and his teammates are preparing for tonight's game. It was just awesome talking with him. Also want to give a shout out to our guys over at Alabama Recruiting. They're going to start joining us on some episodes, giving some insight on some recruits and things going around Alabama and also on other places. They do a great job. Also, if you're a recruit out there and they're looking for a site to help you out and get some exposure, check them out, alabamarecruiting.com. And like I said, they're going to be joining us from time to time. It's always great to have guests on to get insight from them and their perspective on things. We have our opinions, but it's also to hear different opinions. As always, it's great to be on. Booj has our social media handles to give out.
That's right, Zach, I do. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for joining me again This has been fun. We are 6 episodes in. We're loving every minute of it. My favorite part is recording, getting into it, talking about sports, giving you our opinions. Hopefully we'll get some feedback from y'all on our Twitter, which is at ATD Sports Talk. We also have an Instagram at ATD Sports Talk, a YouTube channel, Agree to Disagree Sports Talk, and we are now on iTunes. Every episode is on iTunes. Agree to Disagree Sports Talk. Guys, thank you so much for joining us for another episode. This is episode 6 of Agree to Disagree Sports Talk with Zach and Boo.
Have a good one, everybody!